Baptiste Bruyère and Thomas Watson are making a documentary on Thomas Watson's grandmother. Thomas, what gave you the idea to make a documentary?
There are two big mysteries. The first is that she never spoke about what happened in World War II. So what kind of things happened? Was she beaten? What happened to her family? We know little bits and pieces, like the fact that her family was separated. She went to a women's camp with her mother, and her children went to her brothers rather went to a male camp. We also want to find out what happened after the war. Again, as I said, we know little bits and pieces, what country she stayed in straight afterwards and where she went to, where she initially settled. But after that, it's all a very big blur. And the mystery, the causes of this are, that my grandmother would interact with her children in a very specific way, that really reflected her fear of the outside world. And this in turn affected her children and their interaction with the world as well.
Seriously, the reason of the title is, or you need a bit of background to understand why we chose this title. We decided, in order to, while making documentary, we decided to go to Indonesia to find a camp where Yvonne Holman, Tom's grandmother, was kept. And what's interesting is that what used to be the camp is now part of Semarang City. It's a quarter of Semarang City that's called Manga, the Manga district, which in English would translate into mango. Another interesting thing is that this district is divided in sections bordered by streets, and they're all called mango streets. The barracks, the barrack where Yvonne Holman's was kept was on Mango Street number 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
It was on number 7. Why did we decide to because I think your question was interesting. Did it start or did it end there? I believe that it ended there. At least one part of Yvonne Holman's life. It was the end of the Dutch colonies. I think it was the end as well of the life, or at least the lifestyle as well, the life projects of many of the people who lived in Indonesia at the moment, or the Dutch East Indies. In the case of this woman, which I think she was very much an example of a liberated woman actually of the 20th century. She was about to become a lawyer, and she was about to work for the League of Nations. She was, of course, well educated and strong-minded. Somebody who certainly would have made a big difference. She was one of the earliest feminists, and I think she could have become a role model. But the Japanese put an end to that, and everything that she had planned for her own life, because we all plan our lives, don't we? Consciously and consciously. Ended there. It ended there, and family was, I don't know if Tom has mentioned that yet, but after the war, the family was unable to reunite. The father of Yvonne Holman had been heavily tortured and lost his mind in the camp. His wife as well just went through major trauma. She was very sick. And had to take care of the kids, who themselves had been traumatized by their own experience. So some of them, part of the family, the whole family went back to Holland. But in the meantime, Yvonne Holman met
John Watson.
Yes, a young RAF officer, John Watson, and her life changed radically. What she had planned her own life, from social status to the plans, to even the very place where you come from. I mean, she was born there. What I think that struck me again through the different interviews we had with people who lived there is how they refer to that part of the world as a lost paradise. So she wasn't able to go back to the earliest memories of her life. So a lot of things, very vital, very important things in life disappeared because of what happened on Mango Street. And that's why we both thought that The World Ended on Mango Street was a good title. Yeah.
And for us as well, going to Semarang and finding that address was, for all sorts of reasons, a big turn of events. It really, I think, defined what the film was about. Initially, we started off as trying to piece together the fragments that were left behind. And, you know, one way of doing that would be to go to Indonesia and find answers to, very strong and answers that would help to understand why Yvonne was the way she was. But instead what we found was more questions. And I guess what is what really defined that was the fact that the house where she stayed was completely demolished, as was all of the houses in that area. So you would never know that it was anything other than a nice district, a very middle-class Indonesian district. But at that area where she was imprisoned actually now became a laundromat where people were cleaning clothes. And from our research, we found that this really was a very powerful metaphor for everyone's interaction with that particular part of history. They were, in many instances, trying to dry clean the past.
And just on that note as well, because I think I sort of digress partly, I would say that the world of Yvonne Holman ended on Mango Street. Everything that she had, everything that she was not expecting, her family, everything just really came to an end there.
When people die, they don't completely disappear. They leave fragments of stories, and if you are patient enough to piece them together, they make a fairly accurate picture of life. In the case of my grandmother, all she left was a thick, impenetrable fog. This was deliberate. She had no intention of leaving anything behind. Yvonne Holman had the ideal life in anyone's eyes. A loving husband with a well-paid job. 4 beautiful kids who loved her dearly. The perfect house in the latest building development. She picked up her daughter from ballet practice. She threw cocktail parties for friends, neighbours, colleagues and acquaintances. How many of them knew that her life was devastated in a Japanese concentration camp? Did she ever realise her silence would affect those she loved most? As much as you try, you can't keep the past silent.